Three, two, one. Hi, this is Sarah from Dragon Con Theater and Performing Arts Lovers Unofficial, and we're here for another uh, Dragon Con digital panel about cabaret. Um, anyway, as many of you know, cabaret is a legend in the theater community. It is one of the most influential, maybe the most decisive musicals, we might say. It has a long history both in the theater as well as in movies. And anyway, we're here to celebrate its legacy today. I'm joined by all these amazing panelists. If you guys could go ahead and introduce yourselves. Sorsha, can you start us out?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sorsha. I am from Atlanta, currently live in Wilmington, North Carolina. Cabaret was a big part of my upbringing, and I'm very happy to be here.
How about you, Rob?
Hi, I'm Rob Levy. I live in St. Louis, but I will probably be around the convention this weekend. So, hello. I love cabaret. I kind of came to it late in life as a film, and I kind of love to live vicariously by learning who they cast at different times to play the different parts.
Definitely. How about you, Rick?
Hi, I'm Rick Tatro. I'm in Clearwater, Florida. I teach technical theater in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I was a latecomer to cabaret. I designed the lights for our production of it in grad school back in around 2002. And that's when I first saw the movie and did the play. And I have lots of thoughts about both.
Okay, awesome. And how about you, Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Farrell. I live in Marietta, which is just north of Atlanta if you're not from Georgia. I played Fräulein Schneider in my college production of Cabaret in about 95, 96, so I was 19 or 20.
Awesome. Well, that kind of gets me to our first discussion, which is, what was your first experience? I know that Rick, you said that you first started in college. So with the play, what did you think of the play at the time?
It's kind of funny because at the time in 2002, it was just, a quaint old show. It wasn't as relevant as it is now.
No.
That's why I watched the movie. I'd always heard of it. Everybody knew the songs, at least Willkommen and Cabaret. And I, as a theater professional, especially as a technician and designer, it's kind of horrible to admit, but I hate reading scripts. And so I was like, all right, we're going to do this show. I'm going to design the lights. I'll watch the movie. And then I watched the movie and then started looking at the script and went, these are two very different things. So it was kind of confusing. And it took me quite a while to reconcile the two together. I have, they're I think they're both great in their own ways, but they are very, very different experiences.
Definitely. How about you, Rob? What was your first experience with cabaret?
So my first experience to cabaret is unlike anybody here. It'll be weird and bizarre, but I came to cabaret through samples in British pop music in the 80s.
Oh, really?
There is a band called ACT, A-C-T, which featured Claudia Brucken from the band Propaganda and Steve Lipson, who's been a record producer, and it was put out on Trevor Horn from The Art of Noise and the Buggles and Yes on his ZTT records, right? And they had a record that they made called Snobbery and Decay, and they sampled lots of things in that record, including large snippets of the cabaret film. And I'm like, what is this, right? And the various variations of the remixes have different samples in it. So eventually, that got me hooked. And then as I grew older, as a history person, just being intrigued by Weimar Germany and sort of the culture of it and the artistic legacy of it, as well as being in love with German film at the time, and silent film, kind of made me want to jump into this because it just kind of seemed like it would be in my wheelhouse.
Definitely. Yeah. No, that's awesome. How about you, Sorsha?
So I came from musical theater family. My parents loved taking me to shows. My first experience with Cabaret, I was 4.
Okay.
At the Fox Theater in Atlanta. And obviously at age 4, you don't put all of the things together. You just go, that's pretty costume. That's fun movement. 4-year-old Sorsha's happy as a clam. As I got older and I started like investing myself in the history and as a dancer, Bob Fosse's choreography, I started to latch onto it in a more mature, oh, this is an important piece of art, which I feel like people are aware that it's important, but I don't know, it changes every year that I listen to the album or every year that I watch the movie. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Amy? I know you said college as well, right?
Right. My first experience with Cabaret was actually reading the script. And so I had not seen the movie or seen a production of it. I did actually not know anything about it really before I auditioned for the show. So I came into it blind, pretty much.
Well, that's cool. For me, my first experience with Cabaret, I was 18 years old, and it was a birthday present from my mom, the DVD. I mean, as somebody who grew up in, I wouldn't say a conservative by any means, but I went to Christian school, like, bit of an eyes wide open thing when I first watched it because I had just never quite seen anything like it. At that time, I was getting super into Fosse, so like it was that natural thing for my mom to do. To give me. I loved musicals growing up, and Liza. I mean, come on. It would be several years later and when I finally saw it in the theater and realized that, hey, this movie is very different from the theater show. But I don't love it any less. I see them as two cousins, I guess. So that it was my experience with Cabaret. One of the things I know, Rick, you talked about this is how like relevant Cabaret feels right now, and like there is that like in the atmosphere and the emotions and stuff like that. It feels very relevant for today, even though this play is decades old at this point. So like what emotions does it convey to you right now, like thinking about today's world, like how relevant does it feel to you guys now? And Sorsha, what do you think of that?
Oh, the emotions. Well, I have to give you what my living standard is. And I got my living standard from Indiana Jones, which is we punch Nazis. Mm-hmm. That's my rule. You punch a Nazi. I mean, just tonally and emotionally, I feel like Cabaret does this really beautiful thing, especially in the stage production, where the music and a lot of the show scenes fill you with so much joy. But when you dissect it and you really break down the lyrics of all the songs, you're like, oh, this is not happy at all. This is very sad. This is very dark. So I feel like there's this really lovely balancing act of how do we fill people with joy, but also give them a little bit of that depth of, I guess, turmoil would be the best word for it.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Rob? What do you think of the emotions of it all?
Hey, I figured out how to use it. I think the thing for me is that it does kind of scare the hell out of me about how prescient it remains. A lot of things that happened in the late 20s and 30s are happening again. The sort of theater and artistic culture of that time is sort of seen as like underground or weird or fringe. It's not necessarily the mainstream. It's not really accepted. We're doing this 100 years later, after the Roaring 20s, and it's art under siege again. So there is that. There is also this rigid battle culturally, over moral behavior and this idea of like hedonism, decadence, personal choices, identity. A lot of these themes are kind of coming back. And it's just a lot of the, weirdly enough, some of the clothing and hairstyle a little bit, probably more so at the beginning of this decade than now. But it just sort of, I think he hit upon it too. It's just sort of like you could plop this very easily into now and have it, in any place that's got a fascist running it, like Hungary or, North Korea or whatever, and it kind of would still kind of fit.
Definitely. How about you, Amy? What do you think?
I feel like it sort of underscores the importance of not being apathetic about what's going on in the world around you politically. Like Sally is very much, she doesn't really care. Like what's important to her is her day-to-day life, and she doesn't think that these things going on affect her.
Definitely.
And I was kind of like Sally when I was in the play. Like I wasn't paying attention to politics when I was 19 and 20, and the older I get, the more I realize that this is really important stuff, and it does affect everyone, and we need to be aware of what's going on, and not asleep.
Definitely. How about you, Rick? Do you have anything to add?
Oh yeah. It's terrifying. I was, over the last week, I rewatched. I found a magnificent stage production with Jane Horrocks and
Alan Cumming.
Alan Cumming, thank you. Because it'd been 20 years since I saw the stage play, and then I watched the movie today. And there's a line in the stage play where Ernst, who is not even in the movie, says something to Brian along the lines of, "You're not going to let politics get between us," and he's wearing a Nazi armband.
Yeah.
And in 1931, that did not have the connotation it does now.
Yeah.
And so, and other characters, Schultz is like, "Oh, this will pass. These guys are here now. We've been through this before. They'll have their moment, and then they go away." And looking at it from, with the hindsight of future knowledge, it's terrifying how people didn't take the Nazis seriously until it was too late. And it's easy to kind of look at that in the play and go, "Oh, those silly history people, they were just blind." But it's happening now.
It is happening now. Definitely.
And if you had asked me this question in 2015, I'd have been like, "Oh no, that'll never happen again." Then we had an election and everything went to hell. And now, we can't afford to be blissfully ignorant anymore. We can't say, "Oh, it's just politics, I don't care."
No, and I 100% agree with that. And I think that it's very telling that Cabaret is coming back now. Like
Mhm.
it's been on the West End and it's been very successful in the West End, and now it's coming once again back to Broadway. And I think that that is almost a sign of our times, because it's a message that could have easily been lost. It's a show that could have easily been lost in time and grown irrelevant, but it's not. And for them to bring back a musical that has been done so many times on Broadway now, that tells you like this is still a story to be told, and it's still something that will speak to people, I guess. Um, Now, on a more happy note, we kind of started this a little bit seriously. What do you think about the musical, the movie and the musical versions? Uh, both of them had these major musical moments. Um, uh, Obviously, you have Mine Air from the movie and Maybe This Time, which are both like classic songs in musical theater, but were written for the movie. And then you have music that like the telephone song and Don't Tell Mama that are also not in the movie. Um, what does how does the music impact you? What do you think of the music? Do you have any favorite songs? Rob, I know you said you started out with the music, so
Well, it's just like the Come to the Cabaret one, and I think the great thing about the music, which is sort of not being as, probably as completely well schooled as everybody else here in terms of the technical aspects of it. But the musical songs written in the theater at the time when this was first done and performed, there is definitely a magic about all those songs. So like literally you can go from every contemporary that this play has, and the songs are all catchy. They've got these great sort of like some of them have this great little sort of like subtle double entendre thing going on, right? It is very much of the time it was written as a musical, not the time that's set, but as a musical. The songs pretty much fall in line with a lot of the other songs that are in its oeuvre, and that's okay. I think the songs can actually almost live alone without it, and I think part of that is because of Liza Minnelli and her being, a singer and a performer, that you can listen to just the album of the film soundtrack, right? And then the songs, and then you will want to go and explore the other soundtracks, and you'll kind of hear, oh, I didn't hear this song, or I didn't hear that one. They are painfully catchy. They are painfully tongue-in-cheek, but they also have. I don't know how to phrase this other than they are both light and ominous at the same time. I hope that makes some kind of sense. They have these this sort of like jollity and sort of like frolic kind of thing going on, but then they have these little subtle undertones, right? So in many ways they are much deeper and more complex than people think, but they're also incredibly catchy and very they're almost like pop music on their own, right? A lot of the musicals of this time, that the soundtracks are almost pop records, and just they're so catchy. They've got the way they do the harmonies, the way they do the melodies, and just the way that they're tracked and things. It all sounds catchy as all get up. So I think that is part of it, and I think that everyone has sort of heard these songs. Like the thing that amazed me about Cabaret is once I discovered, hearing it and it's like, oh, I've heard this song sort of around, right? It's a lot like, it kind of reminds me of Chicago in that, those are both musicals that I've heard the songs from it here and there sprinkled around the world of popular culture. This will probably come up at a different panel at the con, but the songs sort of have lived beyond the music, both the musical and the film. And I think that's also part of it too. And that is also musicals of this time have managed to do that, do that. And, I think this is what, 66, I think, right?
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, that sounds right.
66 people are
the play
looking.
premiered in 66.
Yeah, 66 people are looking, to go to a theater and have an experience. They're looking for answers in, the swinging 60s. They're looking for answers to these questions. And one of the places they look for them is in their art. And Cabaret is one of those places that they get that, right? The politics, the clash of like generations and things. It's all something, and that comes into the music as well. So there's a very long answer to a simple question. I apologize.
Do you have a favorite song from Cabaret?
I do like the telephone song. I think that's probably the one that I kind of go back to a little bit. And just that first big "Come to the Cabaret" number. That's sort of that's what Broadway is, right? That's all the bells and whistles and everything. It's like it's big, it's bombastic, and it's you get the pageantry. So there's that too.
Definitely. How about you, Rick?
Yeah, I think the music in the play. Okay, it's gonna sound like I'm coming down harder on the movie than the play, and I don't want it to sound like that because they're very different.
Yeah.
But the music in the movie almost feels like, all right, we said this is Cabaret, so we've got to put some of these numbers in here so people believe it's Cabaret. But it's really more about the triangle of Liza and those guys.
Yeah.
In the play, the music really part of it carries the story, songs like Marriage and Me Skite and stuff like that, and Tomorrow Belongs to Me. It's such a haunting number. But then you've got the songs that are part of the cabaret itself, where on one level, especially if you're looking at 1966, you've got that era of like, musicals like Hair, where it's let's disturb people, let's just freak people out. Which is, theater has been doing that forever. It's one of the things, we love to do is just totally screw with the straight people. Not straight sexuality, but just, straight-minded, well, that too. When you're watching the music or listening to the music from the play, it's easy to go, oh, that's just stupid. Or listening to Joel Grey and the people that followed him. Oh, God damn it. Sorry. That phone hasn't rung all day.
Had to happen sometime.
So yeah, it's the telephone song coming to haunt you.
Okay, my wife got it. Sorry about that. It's the landline. The only people that call on that are my mother-in-law and telemarketers. But a lot of them, if you just sort of look at the surface, they seem like shock value songs. And or the vocalizations that Joel Grey uses as the MC, and a lot of people have followed him in that path. With the kind of really bizarre over enunciation and almost baby talk sometimes, the way he does it. I think it's all designed to kind of subvert normality and kind of exaggerate the hedonistic world of the cabarets at the time, because this is based on a book that was written about pre-World War II Germany and the hedonism of the cabarets that was leading up to one of the things that the Nazi Party used as a crowbar, saying, look how awful this is. Look how decadent we've become, how hedonic, and, again, you can look around all the I live in Florida. So, the war against anything other than, narrow pseudo-Christian values is just, it's on the front page every day. And I think the music, it can be easily dismissed as silly or shock. I mean, the song Through My Eyes, if you watch the number with, the person in the gorilla suit, But then the last line of that song,
She doesn't
Mhm.
look Jewish
doesn't
at all.
Jewish at all.
Yeah.
It just kicks you right in the feels.
And the movie had a revival, and the play, to a certain extent, had a revival in the 80s in Britain, largely because they were using a lot of the themes and values in this musical as sort of like triumphant, defiant statements against Thatcherism,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It was really big in the 80s, I think, in America too, for many reasons, because it was fighting off the moral majority and Reagan, right?
Mhm.
And now I think we're at the same point. I think that's a great point that Rick has brought up. It's so, a musical, any musical that's got a historical slant to it has a certain advantage because at some point those themes and ideas are all going to be in vogue again, right? And I also think too that everyone loves the 20s. It's sort of this like nostalgic thing that people don't necessarily understand, but they think it's all, so you can sell that. You can sell that image of the 20s in the music, right? And I think that's part of it.
Definitely.
Now, I don't necessarily. You asked what you asked us to come. What's our favorite song? And again, if you had asked me a few years ago, I wouldn't have had one. But I put it up on the Facebook group. I don't know. I hope you all saw it. An Amy Lennox performance of Cabaret. Because that song is very in the theater world. It's kind of trite. It's kind of like everybody does it. And watching Liza at the end of the movie sing the song, it was very much it's a concert number. It's I'm belting it. It's a happy song. And then Amy Lennox did the song at the Olivier Awards the way Sally Bowles is absolutely destroyed at this point in the play, and she played it that way.
Definitely.
And suddenly, I've made all of my students watch this. I show it to them every year at some point because it's just so moving. I can't watch it without tearing up anymore.
Yeah.
And I've seen it dozens of times. It's amazing. And then the watching Jane Horrocks in the production I saw on YouTube, she doesn't leave anything on the stage either. She just everything pours out the emotion of that moment in the show. And because of those two performances, Cabaret is now my favorite song in the whole show, if not one of my favorite songs from any show.
Definitely. How about you, Amy?
I would say like my favorite sort of catchy, fun song from the show is Don't Tell Mama. It's fun to sing, it's fun to watch, but it kind of also tells you a little bit about Sally.
It's a good introduction to her character.
Yeah. The song that I guess means the most to me though is "What Would You Do?" Obviously, because that was one of Fraulein Schneider's songs. But it feels to me like it really asks the audience to put themselves in her shoes, and it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, I'm in love with this man," or "I have a real tenderness for this man. I'm going to stay with him no matter what." It's do or die for us. But Fraulein Schneider was really practical, and she'd survived all this other stuff until this point and on her own. So, I don't know. It means a lot to me.
Definitely. No, definitely.
Well, that's a wonderful song because especially as I'm getting older, I've learned that the idealism of youth kind of burns away after a time, and you're like, I don't have many years left, and I don't want to lose those ones that I've got.
Right.
Yeah, the whole Romeo and Juliet thing is really sweet, but I'd rather, die in my sleep than have a bunch of jackbooted thugs come in and drag us out.
Right.
Definitely. Sorsha, what do you think?
Oh, well, again, the music's been a big part of my upbringing. And then being a dancer, you hear these songs at competitions all the time, danced to by much too young little girls. 7-year-olds should not be dancing to Don't Tell Mama. For me, the music informs the story so much because it's easy to give a lesson when the audience is having fun.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that, here's this fun, happy number, Willkommen to the Cabaret. Oh, we're going to blindside you with Tomorrow Belongs to Me.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's one of those songs that while it's beautifully done, and I will never discredit that, that is the one song that I'm like, skip.
Yeah.
I don't want to cry right now. For favorite songs, though, I have two. And I'm going to second what Rick said about Amy's Cabaret because I've never seen a mental breakdown more beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I watched that scene from the Olivier Awards so many times, and I sent it to my mom, and I was like, you have to watch this right now. And she called me afterwards, and she's like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that song should be performed for stage.
Mm-hmm.
Not taking anything away from Liza, but she did do it as a big brassy, this is my 11 o'clock number.
Mm-hmm.
Not, oh, I'm broken.
Mm-hmm. I just had an abortion. I've lost the man that I love. I mean, the world's falling
I've lost
apart.
everything.
Exactly.
No, how would you perform that if you genuinely lost everything? And then my other favorite, because I love the sad pieces, very specifically Alan Cummings' version of I Don't Care Much.
Mm.
I love that number. I love the scene with the beaded dress. I love his delivery. It's such a striking number, and it's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I really resonate with just the I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Outcast kiddo over here.
For me, I have two things. Number one, as I said, I started out with the movie. So the song that always like speaks to my heart in terms of that is Maybe This Time. I'm just gonna be honest. I always like, if you want a song to make me cry and speak to my soul, it's going to be Maybe This Time, because I always, and I'm not just about love and everything else, but just like everybody loves a winner, so nobody loves me. Like that line just, it like breaks me every single time I hear it. And because of that number, I'm not going to say I forgive them for doing what they did to Cabaret, because I understand why they did what they did to the is it called Welcome to the Cabaret or just Cabaret? I'm not sure. But because of the heartbreak in that song, mm-hmm. I can kind of understand why they didn't do that again at the end. Yeah. But the other one, and Rick, you touched on it, If You Could See Her. It starts as this, like, kind of funny, jaunty piece that you think, oh, he's talking to a woman in an ape suit. And then right at that end, like when they say she wouldn't look Jewish at all, it's just like right through the heart, like right to the core of the show. I love Willkommen. I mean, if you guys are a part of the theater group, I post it all the time when I'm welcoming new members because I love it. I love the song. I love every rendition of it. But yeah, those are going to be my two favorites. Now, what I do think is getting, I guess, a little bit more away from the serious again, the humor in Cabaret. Like I think Cabaret when you look at the MC, whether you're talking about Joel Grey or Alan Cumming, or any number, Adam Pascal did it as well. Any number of people have a lot of fun with that. Like, I always think of the money, 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 money song. And how do you think like the humor plays into it? Like, does the humor work in a serious tone like that? Like, do you have fun when watching Cabaret?
I think you have to. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it underscores the message that, you know, when you live in perilous times, you got to take time to laugh, right? And, you know, it does underscore this idea that, you know, laughing in times of adversity is healthy.
Does the humor stand on its own, though, or is it just like?
I think it's a core component of it. I'm not sure it stands. I'm not sure it was written or intended to be standalone. I think it's part of, you know, a break from sort of like the stuff going on. You know, I think you need humor, whether it's black comedy or slapstick or whatever. You need in a story telling this many pretty heavy things that you need some sort of break from that.
Definitely.
I'm curious in this same vein. Some of y'all are, most of y'all are a lot younger than I am. In 1966, I was born in 64. So my early childhood years, a lot of the like cartoons and variety shows and stuff were still very heavily rooted in vaudeville. And a lot of the numbers in Cabaret are in that similar vein of, you know, like the song Two Ladies. Now, there's no deep context to that one, but it's just silly,
raunchy,
silly. and yeah. And I can relate to that because that's kind of the you know, if not necessarily, they weren't doing that on Saturday mornings when I was a kid, but you know, that type of stuff and, you know, the wordplay and things like that. Well, you know, Rocky and Bullwinkle really weren't that far from it. There was a lot of innuendo in the stuff I grew up watching.
Yeah.
But you know, because the parents needed something to keep them interested. But I'm curious if that type of humor works for younger people, because I can look at it and go, we don't really do that much now, but I know where it's coming from. But as the show ages, are people like changing it to be, you know, more modern, or are they keeping it in the time period where it's from?
From what I think, go ahead.
I think ultimately how it's perceived by folks that are a little bit younger, I think it depends on how you're raised and if you're raised with the material. I mean, I tread a line of, okay, we don't behave that way anymore, but I can still see the humor in it. I can still laugh at it. But I also have friends that would absolutely turn their noses up at me, knowing how much I enjoy things like Cabaret, or if we want to talk really controversial, Blazing Saddles.
Yep.
And I think it depends on how you're raised, and I think it depends on who gets a hold of the material to do revivals and things like that.
Definitely.
Yep.
I think for me, you know, from what we've seen of the new version, which isn't a lot, they've done a pretty good job of not having spoilers.
They've stayed real tight-lipped.
Yeah. They seem to do a very good job of keeping true to the original, but then again, finding ways to make it relevant to a younger audience. You know, as I said, I grew up in a little bit more of a sheltered experience. Um, but anybody who grew up watching even older musicals like I did, like Gypsy, for example, we know what vaudeville is, okay, and we know what cabaret is. Now, I will tell you, when I first watched this musical, I was a little shocked, to say the least. I had never seen anything like that. But especially when you talk about some of the things, like I'll even bring drag into it as well. Those things are not so different than like what we experience today. We just might not call it cabaret. Though cabaret still exists. I mean, there's a cabaret club in New York called Don't Tell Mama, very famous cabaret.
Love that.
And so you have burlesque, you have, and while they're not the same, they're all kind of that same regard. Now,
Yeah.
Amy, what do you think?
Are we still talking about the humor?
Yeah, oh, we can talk about
Sort of.
humor. Like, do you think it's relevant? I like his question too.
I do think it's relevant. And I also, I agree with Rob with, the audience needs a break from all the heavy, with a little bit of a humor thrown in too. But it's a dark humor, It's not. It seems kind of lighthearted and silly, but then you kind of think about it, and you're like, oh, that's a little on the nose, So yeah, I do. I like the humor, but yeah, I'm not sure it stands by itself either. I think it needs like the context of the rest of the show.
I'm going to be honest. I almost think some of the humor does stand on its own, especially when you're taking the movie into regard. So I'm going to bring up the money scene again. Okay. If you watch, just put that clip on YouTube right now, people will just think it's a funny little jive about it, but it's very funny, even if you don't understand the context of the show. So in some ways, I do think that the humor can stand on its own. But that being said, I think it definitely is needed in the show. That's just my opinion, though. I'm a moderator playing panelists again.
And I'm, I realized I never answered the question. I took us off on a tangent, and I apologize.
Oh yeah, I didn't either.
Because I think you're right. Some of the, a lot of the cabaret numbers, in quotes, if you're listening and not seeing, they do stand on their own. Because like the money scene, when I watched it in the movie this afternoon, I was like, okay, this is a fun number, but it could have been anywhere in the film. It really didn't, you could take it out of the film and it wouldn't affect the flow of the movie. Or you could have put it anywhere else and it really didn't plug into the story at all, other than like sort of a meta idea of, both Brian and, is he Brian in the movie?
He's Brian in the movie. He's Cliff on stage.
That's right. Okay, I get the names just.
I like to change them.
But they're, other than the fact that both he and Sally are chasing the money of Max. Yeah. So in the larger context, that money, that number makes sense because it's pointing out these two are, well, Sally, we're not surprised because that's kind of her whole MO. But the writer, he's trying to make a living, and now they're both sleeping with this rich guy for the money, or even though if they're not admitting it. And then you get the scene where she's like, he left us 300 marks, and they both are like, yeah, that's what we were doing.
No, definitely. And and this isn't about the humor at all, but one of the things that I think is really modern almost about the movie is it shows like that first like menage a trois, like polyamorous almost type of relationship on screen. I can't think of an earlier version where it was so like outwardly there. Like, and so like those are like just some of those scenes, like just it just shows, I guess, a little bit more of how groundbreaking but also modern the show is. Did anybody else have anything else to add about the humor of Cabaret?
I agree with what Rick said. There are certain numbers in the show, like the Cabaret centric numbers, that, yeah, the humor of those can stand on their own.
Yeah, definitely. Now, the MC. Okay, we've got two big Tony winners. Let's be honest, there very well may be a third coming up when it gets to Broadway. He is technically relegated to a supporting role, but he is the most famous, in my opinion, at least, of all the characters, even more so than Sally, which her story is literally what inspired the original story that became the musical we know as Cabaret. Everybody kind of does their own thing. Obviously, you have Joel Grey's version where he is just like he doesn't play up the sex really at he's sexual, but it's much more of ambiguous. I don't version of it. And then you've got Alan Cumming, who there is not more
subtlety there.
overtly sexual in there. So why do you think the MC is so dang popular? Like he doesn't have a lot of story to tell, so of his own. So why is he so popular? Saoirse, what do you think?
I feel like you saw my face.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, first, two very different takes. And if anybody has listened to the West End version with Eddie Redmayne, that's another very different take.
Definitely.
I think it's the fact that, let's be honest, that story goes in and out. It goes in and out of life and the cabaret. The MC, particularly for stage, pulls you back into the Kit Kat Club.
Mm-hmm.
He's quasi-involved in scenes outside of the Kit Kat Club as the dark narrator, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is an element of narration to his parts. Mm-hmm. For example, Perfectly Marvelous.
Mm-hmm.
They finish up that number and it goes right into him saying, so you see, everyone in Berlin has a perfectly marvelous roommate, and it goes right into two ladies.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why the MC is so popular is because he fills that narrator role, but he does it in such a compelling way where people want to know more.
Mm-hmm.
He becomes a very interesting character to latch on to, and you develop this emotional investment, not so much for how the movie ended, but for how the musical ended when you see the star,
Mm-hmm.
the triangle,
Mm-hmm.
you know how it ends for the MC. So you develop this emotional response and this emotional connection to your narrator. And then you're like, oh man, he gonna die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And he's just fun.
Yeah. Rick, why is the MC so popular?
I agree with Saoirse on a lot of those points. He's the character who is up until the Alan Cumming production, and I don't know if they've kept with that since, who was immune to the world in which he was acting.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to do anything he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And subtlety isn't really the word I would use for that character, but I think that there is a line that the actor must find to not cross when playing that character, so that the camp doesn't become ridiculous. And I think the best performers of that do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got a character who is in the moment, but out of the moment as well, out of the reality of it, and is almost directing the reality of it. And I think that's why that last scene with Alan Cumming, when he drops the coat and he's wearing the Auschwitz uniform, it was so powerful, because up until then the MC was untouchable. But it was perfect. I don't know if it was a matter of nobody thought of it before, or just nobody had the courage to do it before. But that was it was like, a kick in the teeth of, even this character was a victim eventually. But up until then, it's just like, people love gangster movies because the gangsters can do whatever they want and there's no consequences until another gangster puts a cap in their head. The narrator is free, as opposed to all the other characters who are locked into what they have to do.
And one thing I find really interesting about Alan's portrayal, and in that version in particular, which for the audience, if you don't know what we're talking about, it's the 1993 version, the first version he did in Britain. I'm pretty sure it was filmed for TV, and then they released it on DVD and video. But if you compare him to Joel Grey's stage version of the MC, he integrates himself a lot more into the story. Like, as you said, like at the end where he drops the coat and he's in the Auschwitz uniform, or he's the soldier with the whistle, or he's a lot more involved than Joel was in the story itself. And I think that I love Joel, and I think he's amazing. And he and John Kander won the Lifetime Achievement Awards this year, largely based on their work for Cabaret. But Alan, I think, has my vote for the best, and I think he really made that a role that everybody wants to play.
Yeah,
it could have very easily have been a throwaway part, but because everybody does something a little different with it, it became a sought after role.
Yeah, definitely.
And the actors that
in Jesus Christ Superstar.
Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry, Rob.
I was going to say they have like this. It's almost a role that every important stage actor of their time has to do. Like Neil Patrick Harris has done it. Alan Cumming has done it. Like anybody that wants to be like a name known for their theater legacy sort of does this role. And I think that having that legacy of people who've done it is also important, because it sort of helps embody the importance of the character as new productions happen, right? And then you get new takes on it by actors that have like gravitas and some ways to make the narrator different. I mean, basically his job is to segue between this fantasy world of the cabaret and this dark, hellhole outside of it that's economic depression and poverty and just people forget that Berlin in the 30s was falling apart. It wasn't exactly it wasn't Paris, right? So
sorry, I was just thinking of the ending line about Paris, but go ahead.
that's so it kind of stitches together everything, and his job is to sort of straddle that line between two worlds, so that people get a glimpse into each world through the narrator. So I think that's important.
Definitely. How about you, Amy? Do you have anything to add about the MC?
It's just really fun to watch.
Yes.
And it just kind of personifies this sort of hedonism and desperation that underlies the
Good
story.
call.
So it's almost like watching a train wreck. You can't really look away. Um, that's the MC is probably my favorite role in the show. And when we did our production in college in little bitty Macon, Georgia, in the middle of the state, we had a professional drag queen from Atlanta come and play the MC, and it was amazing.
Definitely.
You know, I'm curious, and I don't know if any of you know. I haven't looked it up. Alan Cumming had needle bruises on his arms,
Yes.
and I wonder if that was an actor choice or a director choice or what. But it was
I'm
interesting.
not sure, but he got like extremely involved in that number. I mean, he came back and did it 3 times.
Yeah.
So I could see him being the kind of actor he is. I don't know if he's necessarily like a character actor, but it almost seems like something that he would add just for those people who would notice those things. Like you don't see it unless you're looking for those little details.
The devil is in the details.
Definitely. Now, we are getting kind of close to time, but one of the other characters I wanted to talk about was Sally, because she is our heroine, okay? But she's not. She's not very likable. Like at least, and again, here I go, I'm playing panelist again. But she is very self-centered, very uh you know dismissive of anything that doesn't involve her. And like, why do we care so much about Sally at the end, to the point where our hearts are breaking when she comes out at that stage and starts singing Cabaret after she's lost everything? Why does Sally's character work? What do you think of Sally? Like, do you think she can be she's redeemable, or is she just like the person you love to hate? Rick, what do you think of Sally?
I have a problem with Sally because Sally is the kind of girl I chased all through my younger years. The more you tell me not to love you, the more I'm going to fall in love with you. And so the first time I went through Cabaret, especially watching the movie first, because in the play she's almost a supporting character, but in the movie it's because it's Liza Minnelli and it's more about that. I absolutely fell in love with, who's not going to fall in love with Liza Minnelli? But her numbers all are autobiographical, saying, I'm not going to stay with you. I'm going to the next person. Don't look at, it's all warnings, red flags all over the place. And yet you still, I can fix her. I can save her. And I think that's why she's so appealing. I'm not sure how, I was going to say how women react to her, but it's not that simple. But I know that as, like I said, she's the kind of, my mother used to accuse me of collecting broken people. she's like right there in the crosshairs, and that's the appeal to me. Even now, I've been married for 20 years. We're 21 years, and my wife is not like that at all, and we're very happy. But that was kind of my modus operandi for a long time, and it still appeals to me. And I'm sure that I'm not alone out there with the guys like, oh, there's another damaged person I can fix.
Definitely. Rob, what do you think of Sally?
Well, I think that she does a couple of things. One, she's sort of your prototypical idea of what we think sort of a woman in the 20s is, right?
Mhm.
We have this sort of like, I touched upon this earlier, we sort of had this blind ambition that like the only thing women did in the 20s is have drinks and go party, when actually they were fighting for an awful lot more. But she sort of fits into this niche that people think a woman from the 20s is, you know, a party girl and a girl who is doing things on her own terms, but she's also a woman who is desperately fighting to hide her vulnerability and is also kind of lost. But I also think that, you know, she kind of represents the sort of carefree blindness of that time. You know, everybody, you know, Germany's got it, you know, far worse than us, because in the 20s they're blindsidingly not looking at the writing on the wall of fascism, you know, where the rest of the world, different parts of Europe and the US, it's like, you know, the economy is about to collapse, right? It's sort of like this, she is kind of someone that's like, so she kind of represents this sort of like self-satisfying culture that we had in the 20s, that is kind of carefree and oblivious, but then all of a sudden is. And then when they all of a sudden are thrown into having to deal with real life trauma, don't mess with them because they are fierce, right? The thing I really liked is that we get a woman who's sort of like really has, I'm going to show my age, like I lived in the 70s, but she's got this like gusto to her, right? She, you know, I'll tell you when, you know, it's okay to love me. I'll tell you when the party's over. I'll tell you when you need to worry about all these things outside the doors, right? And it's sort of a live and let live kind of, you know, live every day like it's your last kind of thing. And I think that that's kind of a way of the times. And when I saw the play and I realized she was written different, I did still, and maybe it's the various productions, right? But they all kind of bring that same sort of aspect out to her. I think, you know, here's a sentence you don't hear every day. I think when Molly Ringwald played her, it was a little more nuanced. It wasn't as ramped up, and it was a little more feminine in the traditional way. But I think that it's a character that can do a lot of different things. There's a lot of layers with her that are very fascinating. And every production that you see of her, every production you see, her character is done in a different way, and those layers are rearranged and ordered and textured in different ways. Some ramp up the, you know, the vamp, some ramp up the vulnerable woman, some ramp up you know, fiddle-dee-dee, I'm partying thing, and some people just play it straight like it's written. So I think it's a very interesting character that is much deeper than I think a lot of people that go to it just see. You know, I think if you really are someone that dives beneath sort of the surfaces of this, you really find an interesting and complex character.
Definitely.
I had no idea Molly Ringwald played her. I'd love to see that. I can't even imagine. That would be awesome.
And
Debbie Gibson
also played her.
Yeah, and Debbie Gibson and a couple other people. It's like,
wow.
Yeah. Amy, what do you think of Sally?
I think Sally's a hot mess.
Yes.
Who hasn't, you know, who hasn't been a hot mess in their lives? So I think in that way she's relatable. And also in that way you want Cliff to save her. You want her to be redeemed, and it does hurt when she's broken at the end. You know, she's realized, you know, maybe she doesn't realize exactly what's going on, but she's definitely broken and hurt. And you just kind of feel for her, and you don't, you know, I think as humans, we don't want other people to hurt. So that's, you know, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch her become broken.
Definitely. Sorsha, what do you think of Sally?
No, I agree with Amy. I feel like Sally is very similar to the MC in that there are so many different ways you can play that character. You can amp up the vampiness. You can amp up the turmoil. It depends on who gets their hands on her. I think the reason why people love her as a character so much is because Sally's absolute essence is human.
Mm-hmm.
She is so human because, let's be honest, we can all be selfish.
Mm-hmm.
We can all party a little too much. We can all stick our heads in the sand, and we can all be broken.
Mm-hmm.
And she exhibits all of those things in a 2-hour show. So by the end of it, when she gets out there and bears her soul with Cabaret, you can't help but weep because you're seeing a human woman in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's an element, especially as a woman myself, Sally likes to put on the tough girl image.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need anybody. I don't need you. I don't need this. We all do that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see the cracks in the surface, it hits a little harder when you have that life experience.
Definitely. Well, to end it kind of in a little more fun note, we know it's coming back to Broadway. Casting has not been announced yet. So who do you want to see in the new Broadway cast? Should they bring back Eddie? Should they have somebody brand new? What do we think? Rob, you go ahead.
I basically want the Eddie Redmayne version to come over here. That's just me. I hate this question right off the top.
Sorry.
No, there's so many interesting people that could do different things with it, right? God, the casting is just brutal on this. I think part of me almost wants to see, like, after some of his other stuff, part of me wants to see Ian McKellen do the narrator. I know he's older, but something like that. Part of me wants, someone like a Matt Smith to do this, because he's played Isherwood before. There's a ton of people. It's weird, but whenever I see Good Omens, I think of both Michael Sheen and David Tennant in Cabaret in different
You just spoke to my heart.
in different sorts of way. I could see Emily Blunt doing it. I could see a couple other different people. The question is, I don't know who can sing and who can't, right?
I think Emily can sing. She did Mary Poppins.
Yeah,
and Into the Woods.
I would kind of like to see a person of color do this, just to kind of see how it would work. Although who you would cast, I don't necessarily know. So yeah, I don't really have any casting ideas on it yet. Mainly just because I really wanted to see the Eddie Redmayne version of it so desperately that yeah.
Oh, definitely. Sorsha, what do you think?
Yeah, I have a couple people in my head that I would love to see take on Sally, and that is Eva Noblezada or Amber Gray. I feel like Amber Gray would have a field day with that role.
Yeah, no, she definitely would. Yeah, no, I could definitely see her doing that. Just something with, when I think about her as Persephone, and that seems like she'd be really good. But go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I would love to see Eddie Redmayne as the MC.
Mm-hmm.
There's this very strange part of my brain that has two other names though, and that's Michael C. Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or Taye Diggs.
Didn't Michael C. Hall do it?
Michael C. Hall did Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I don't know that he did Cabaret.
I thought he did, but I don't know.
I will have to check.
That is your research assignment for this panel.
I like homework.
Not yours, I meant.
Oh,
our
the
four
audience.
people. Our four
sure,
people.
You can do the homework. Report back to us.
Stop us in the hallway.
Want an essay. How about you, Rick? What do you think about casting?
I am terrible with questions like that because I have no idea who's hot right now. But I would love to see Lady Gaga play Sally Bowles. And I think I don't have a specific name for the MC, but I'd love to see an NB person
Hmm.
play that role.
Yes, I
You
agree.
know, a person. I was Rob. I was thinking, we need to get some more diversity in this cast. It's a little tricky because there wasn't a whole lot of diversity in Berlin in 1931, but this is also 2023, and we've just done.
They
Hamilton was a huge hit, and there were no
they
no black
retrofit
people.
operas that are set
Yeah,
in Rome in different time periods. You can easily set this in a different period,
exactly. Yeah,
although it'd be weird, but yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I'd love
But
to
would it
see
though?
this cast be a little less white.
No, I totally agree with
I
that.
agree.
I agree too. I think that would be a way to make it a little bit more modern as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
A little bit more diversity in the cast.
There's also a chance to really do some interesting things with the choreography now that they haven't done before. Not much, just you could do a lot of interesting things with that now with the way dance works and also the way projections work. You could do a lot of different stuff with this.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I had to just look up the name, and I'm going to say it wrong. Dua Saleh, I Saleh. They were in Sex Education. I think they were only in like a couple of 9 episodes total, but they're a non-binary Black performer, and they've done some soundtrack work, and I think they would be an amazing MC specifically. I would love to see, as much as I want to see the Eddie version of it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think I would love to see them take those costumes and like the feeling and the makeup and everything like that, but maybe do something maybe a little bit different. Allow them to explore that role a little bit more because
Mhm.
it is very from what we can tell, it is very specific what Eddie did, and the actors who have followed him in that role have been emulating that. So I would like to see them have the chance to do maybe something a little bit different while keeping the staging. As far as Sally goes, I'm not sure I have a name, but I would like to see somebody unexpected in that role. Okay, somebody maybe who you didn't realize was super into theater. I can't remember her name right now. She just won a Tony. Um, she was in Killing Eve.
Mhm.
Um, I think I don't know if she can sing. But I think
Yes, Phoebe Waller-Bridge would be an interesting Sally Bowles.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I would love to see them do is maybe try to modernize some of the elements, like some of the things that, maybe I could see them trying to cut, like the pineapple song. Like,
Such a sweet song, though.
I love the
I would
pineapple song.
yeah, I would love to see them though. Like we as an audience could almost understand that because of what we've been through with the pandemic and not being able to get things. Okay. And like the luxury of this is a pineapple and it came from California. Like those are the kind of things like I would really love to see them do. And I would really like to see them go in an unexpected way with this new production. But that being said, we are over on our time. So I think I'm going to have to wrap this up. I would love everybody to, again, one more time, tell us about yourselves. If you're going to con, where are you going to be at con? otherwise, where can we find you online? Sorsha, you go ahead first.
One more time, I am Sorsha Masters. I'm hoping to be at con. And if I am, you will find me either with the theater folk or in the vendor hall with my folks. Come ask questions. That's what we do. And then online, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is sorsha.a.masters. And you can find me on YouTube. It's Sorsha Masters, but with no vowels. And that's where I post a lot of my dance stuff.
How about you, Rob? Where can we find you?
So you can find me on Post, and for now, the Twitter and the Facebook, and my blog on what the hell's that thing called? WordPress. That's it. Good Lord. And I will be at con. I have a radio show on Louder Than War Radio online. You can check that out. And also on KDHX in St. Louis. And I am a co-host of the Modern Musicology podcast on the ESO network. And also a podcast called Weekend Justice for NeedCoffee.com. But I'll be at con. I have no idea where the hell I'll be. But just, yeah, you can't miss me.
Floating around.
Just look for the shine. You'll find me.
If it's not obvious, this is in the future. Hey, how's it going? Have you drank water yet? Anyway, Rick, how about
Have you showered yet?
how many showers have you taken?
I'm not going to answer that. I'm afraid I will not be at the con. My work schedule coincides with it, unfortunately. But you can find me on the Infinite Potato Alliance podcast network. I'm one of the co-hosts of that Star Trek podcast. Also, Cosmic Potato, the Super Fan Talk podcast at infinitepotato.com.
Awesome. How about you, Amy?
I am hoping to be at con this year. I have not missed a year since 2004. Depends on my partner's health issues. But if I'm there, I will be at the nighttime dance parties mostly. Maybe some panels. You can find me online on Facebook. I'm Amy Pyanvar Farrell. That is not my real middle name. That is a character from a novel series that I enjoy. And I dabble in voiceover. And my work can be found at amyfarrellvoice.blogspot.com.
Awesome. Well, as far as me, this is going up on Monday. So last day of con, sad. Assuming I'm not overly exhausted and passed out, we will have one more panel coming up. That is going to be Behind the Mask. It's a Phantom of the Opera themed panel with alt history in the hotel formerly known as the Sheraton. And other than that, you'll be able to find me around on the Facebook group on Dragon Con Theater and Performing Arts Lovers Unofficial. I am always there. You'll find me on these lovely digital panels that we will continue to do even after the convention. So please go check it out. We have a year's worth of panels on our YouTube as well that we have been doing. So please come to our group, enjoy the theaterness. We are not a track. We are not an official part of con. We hope to be, but until then, we still want to be the group or troupe of fun-loving thespians at Dragon Con. Until then, we're going to say goodbye and have a wonderful rest of your con. Bye.